For centuries, the Draxan Empire had known only conquest. But as a ragged fleet of human ships emerged from hyperspace near the Draxan homeworld, even Emperor Zargoth paused, his victory celebrations cut short. Streamers of shimmering Xylar silk, looted from a conquered world only weeks before, cascaded from the vaulted ceiling of his throne room, momentarily obscuring the holographic projections of Draxan legions marching across 1,000 planets. The air, thick with the cloying scent of victory incense and the guttural cheers of his assembled generals, vibrated with the anticipation of total galactic domination. Zargoth, his chitinous mandibles clicking in satisfaction, surveyed the scene. He was a Draxan Prime, his 6 eyes gleaming with ruthless ambition, his armored carapace reflecting the light like a polished obsidian blade. Resistance was a concept he'd long relegated to the history vids. Then, a discordant chime sliced through the revelry. A junior officer, his scales paling with anxiety, stammered, "My Emperor, sensors report an unanticipated arrival near the Krellian Gate." Zargoth waved a dismissive claw. "A stray freighter, a mining vessel overdue. Deal with it and spare me the trivialities." He fully expected to crush any resistance and had no patience to listen to sensor malfunctions. "Negative, Your Excellency, designated as human, a fleet, though their configuration is unusual." The holographic projections flickered as the sensor data overlaid itself. Zargoth's 6 eyes narrowed. The Draxan warships were a symphony of sleek lines and menacing angles, crafted for speed and overwhelming firepower. What appeared on the screen now was an insult. A collection of older model transports, jury-rigged freighters with visible scorch marks and hastily welded modifications. The fleet was, to put it mildly, ragged. A flicker of unease, like a phantom itch beneath his carapace, crossed Zargoth's face. He silenced the music with a sharp gesture. "Magnify. Identify." Light years away, aboard the command ship Hope, Admiral Mark Wright stared at the tactical display, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. The swirling crimson and violet nebulae beyond the viewport offered a stark contrast to the grim reality unfolding on the screen. The Draxan defenses were formidable. A web of orbital platforms, layered minefields, and patrol routes guarded the homeworld. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Too many lives riding on this, too little hope. He thought of his wife and daughter, lost in the initial Draxan attacks on Earth. Revenge was a luxury he couldn't afford, not if he wanted to get everyone home. "Admiral?" A voice, tinged with nervous energy, broke through his thoughts. Anya Sharma, her dark hair pulled back in a haphazard bun, her eyes bright with manic enthusiasm, bounced into the command center. "Don't let the pretty lights scare you, Admiral. Remember what we talked about." She gestured to the chaotic schematics displayed on the main screen. "They may have the numbers, but we have ingenuity. These modifications will give us the edge they aren't expecting. Maneuverability, unconventional weaponry, and a few surprises I cooked up myself." She grinned, a flash of almost reckless confidence. "They think we're a joke. Let's show them the punchline." Back on the Draxan homeworld, Zargoth's patience had evaporated. Enough analysis. Order a squadron of Annihilator-class cruisers to intercept and eliminate the human fleet. I want a full combat vid within the hour. He fully expected a swift and decisive victory. The Draxan cruisers, sleek predators of the void, surged forward, their energy cannons glowing with lethal intent. They closed on the human fleet, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire. The initial volleys seemed devastating. Explosions blossomed across the void, and several human ships shuddered under the assault. But then something unexpected happened. The human ships evaded. With surprising agility, they weaved through the energy beams, their smaller size and unconventional flight patterns making them difficult targets. Then, the ragged fleet returned fire. Energy weapons, cobbled together from salvaged parts and modified mining equipment, ripped through the void. But Dr. Sharma's modifications proved surprisingly effective. Beams of distorted energy bypass shields, overloaded circuits, and detonated fuel cells. Several Draxan cruisers buckled, their armor breached, their engines sputtering. Zargoth watched in disbelief as his elite cruisers struggled against the ragged human fleet. The combat vids showed chaotic close-quarters engagements, human fighters darting around the larger Draxan ships like angry wasps, their modified weapons inflicting disproportionate damage. He slammed a fist against the armrest of his throne. Impossible. Their technology is primitive. He began to realize he may have underestimated them. On board the Hope, Mark Wright directed the battle, his voice calm amidst the chaos. Faint to starboard, Alpha Squadron. Beta, prepare an ambush in the asteroid field. Remember the Draxan formations, they're predictable. Exploit their weaknesses. His tactics were unconventional, almost reckless, but they were working. The humans secured a limited victory, forcing the Draxan cruisers to retreat in disarray. The Hope itself sustained heavy damage, its hull scarred and breached, its shields flickering, but it remained operational. Zargoth, his face contorted with fury, paced his throne room. "Explain this debacle," he roared. His generals, their carapaces trembling, offered excuses. The humans' unorthodox tactics, Your Excellency. The unpredictable nature of their Dr. Henri, Dr. Sharma's upgrades. Aboard the Hope, Mark knew the victory was only temporary. He gathered his officers in the battered mess hall, the air thick with the smell of burnt metal and recycled air. "We bought ourselves some time, but they'll be back. We took heavy losses. We need to adapt. We need to be ready." Anya approached Mark, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of triumph and concern. "Admiral, I have a suggestion, a risky one. There is a Draxan supply ship that is scheduled to arrive in this sector within the next few hours. It's too dangerous to ignore the opportunity that it presents." The final shot showed Mark looking grimly out at the stars, the Hope's damaged hull a testament to their desperate fight. The light of a distant nebula painted his face in shades of red and purple, reflecting the fires of a war he wasn't sure they could win. "Minimal casualties, Anya." "I know it's a supply ship, but every life matters," Mark said, his gaze fixed on the holographic projection of the crate, a lumbering Draxan transport. Anya Sharma leaned against the console, her brow furrowed. "Understood, Admiral, but Draxan hospitality isn't exactly known for its welcoming committee. We can't guarantee a bloodless capture." "I'm not asking for guarantees, Doctor," Mark sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Just remind the team, we want the ship intact, the cargo and any intel, but we don't want a massacre." Anya nodded, her expression softening. "They know, Mark, they know." The comm crackled to life. "Admiral, Commander Rostova requesting permission to come aboard." "Granted," Mark replied. A moment later, Eva Rostova, a lean woman with a hardened gaze, strode onto the bridge. "Commander, you're leading the boarding party." "Yes, sir," Eva said, her voice clipped. "Dr. Sharma's cooked up some new stealth tech for us, I hear." Anya grinned. "Indeed, modified phase shifters. They'll cloak your approach, make you virtually invisible to Draxan sensors. For a limited time. Think of it as a borrowed advantage." Eva raised an eyebrow. "Limited time, what's the catch?" "The emitters are jury-rigged," Anya explained. "They're powerful but unstable. They'll hold for approximately 40 minutes, maybe less depending on interference. After that, well, let's just say you don't want to be caught with your pants down." Eva nodded grimly. "Understood." 40 minutes, clocks ticking. The human transport Sparrow threaded its way through the debris field, a cloud of jagged asteroids orbiting a dead gas giant. Eva gripped her weapon, her eyes scanning the void. The crate, a bulky silhouette against the starfield, loomed closer. "Activating phase shifters," the pilot announced. A low hum filled the Sparrow as the ship shimmered, fading into near invisibility. "Closing on the crate," Eva reported. "All quiet so far. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Just as they reached boarding range, alarms blared through the Sparrow. Stealth systems failing, we've been detected. Damn it, Sharma, Eva hissed. Too much interference from the asteroids. Get us docked. The Sparrow slammed against the crate's hull, magnetic clamps locking them together. Breaching the hull, Eva led the charge, her weapon spitting blue energy bolts. The crate's corridors were cramped and dimly lit. Draxan crewmen, caught off guard, scrambled for their weapons. Stunners only. Eva yelled, but the order was lost in the chaos. Energy blasts ricocheted off the metal walls. A Draxan soldier lunged at Eva, a vibro knife flashing. She sidestepped the attack, firing a stun blast into his chest. He crumpled to the floor. Another Draxan, bigger and more heavily armed, opened fire with a pulse rifle. Eva ducked behind a crate, energy bolts searing the air above her. She risked a quick peek and fired. The Draxan roared, clutching his arm. Clear, a voice shouted. Corridor secure. Eva felt a searing pain in her side. She glanced down. A crimson stain was spreading across her uniform. I'm hit, she gasped, stumbling against the wall. Secure the ship, find the cargo manifest. Despite her pain, Eva pushed forward, directing her team. They soon located the holding cells. Inside, huddled in fear, were several prisoners of various species. One caught her eye, an Ithorian female, her large hammerhead-like head bowed, her multiple mouths clamped shut. Get these prisoners onto the transport, Eva ordered. Let's move. The Sparrow was packed with crates of supplies and terrified prisoners. Draxan patrol ship inbound. The pilot yelled, bearing 270, they're on an intercept course. Get us out of here, Eva barked. Now, the Sparrow detached from the crate, engines screaming. The patrol ship, a sleek, predatory vessel, appeared on the interface. Energy weapons charged. They've got a lock on us. The pilot threw the Sparrow into a wild, evasive maneuver, dodging energy blasts that streaked past the cockpit. The ship bucked and shuddered. We're losing them, the pilot shouted, but we took some hits. Hull integrity is compromised. They jumped to hyperspace, leaving the damaged crate adrift in the asteroid field. Back on the Hope, Mark examined the captured cargo manifest. This is good, he said to Anya. Supply routes, troop deployments. This could give us an edge. Don't forget the prisoners, Anya reminded him. They might have valuable intel too. Mark nodded. I'll talk to them. He found them huddled in the brig, a motley collection of species united only by their fear, all except the Ithorian. Mark approached her cell. She stood in the shadows, her multiple eyes narrowed, her foremouth set in a grim line. Hatred radiated from her like a palpable force. I am Admiral Mark Wright, he said softly. I regret your imprisonment. She didn't respond, her gaze unwavering. We are at war with the Draxan Empire, Mark continued. I believe they have wronged you and your people. Still nothing. I want to know about the Draxan Empire's weaknesses, Mark said, his voice firm. Their vulnerabilities, anything that can help us defeat them. You are no different, she finally hissed, her voice a guttural rasp. You are just another oppressor, another conqueror. I understand your distrust, Mark replied, but I assure you my intentions are not what you think. I want to help free your people. He paused. I know that you will not believe me and don't expect it. A flicker of something curiosity, perhaps, crossed her face when Mark mentioned disrupting the Draxan communication network. Mark offered her food, water, and medical attention. If you help us, he said, I promise you freedom. Think about it. He turned and walked away, leaving her alone in her cell. On the bridge, Anya approached Mark. Eva's not doing so well, the Draxan weapon. It contained a slow-acting poison. We need an antidote, and the only place to get it is on a Draxan ship. Mark watched the monitor, his gaze fixed on the Ithorian prisoner. He knew that trusting her was a risk, but he also knew that they were running out of time. In her cell, Myra stared intently at the security camera, her multiple eyes gleaming with a flicker of commitment. Myra stared at the holographic feed, replaying Mark's offer again and again. His face, etched with exhaustion, flickered in the dim light of her cell. She dissected his words, searching for the telltale signs of deception she'd learned to recognize over years of Draxan subjugation. But something was different. His eyes. They held a sincerity that unsettled her. She paused the playback, focusing on the footage from the crate. The human boarding party, clad in their bulky armor, had engaged the Draxan guards, but she hadn't seen a single lethal shot fired. Stun blasts, yes, but no outright kills. Was it possible? Could these humans be different? A harsh alarm blared through the hope, momentarily distracting Mark from the strategic displays in the command center. Doctor turned to see Doctor Sharma rushing towards him, her face grim. Eva's condition is deteriorating rapidly, Mark. The Draxan poison is aggressive. Without the antidote, she has less than 24 hours. Eva's face, pale and gaunt, flickered on the main screen. Her breathing was shallow and ragged. He found Myra in her cell, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "I need your help," Mark said, his voice low and urgent. "Eva, one of my crew, is dying from a Draxan poison. We need the antidote and fast. I know you know this ship well. Can you tell me where to find a Draxan medical facility, one that might have what we need?" He spread out a schematic of the sector, highlighting potential locations. "I'm not asking you to fight for us, just to point us in the right direction. But I won't lie, this is dangerous. We'd have to go in blind." Myra remained silent for a long moment, her four throats working in unison. "Information comes at a price, human," she rasped finally. "I know of a Draxan medical station, yes. But before I tell you where it is, you will liberate a group of Ithorian prisoners held on mining outpost Gamma 9. They have suffered enough." Mark hesitated. Time was slipping away. But he met Myra's gaze, seeing the pain and desperation reflected in her multifaceted eyes. "Gamma 9, that's a heavily fortified position, and the clock is ticking, but, all right, I agree. Tell me what I need to know and we'll get your people back." Commander Rostova, her face still bearing the faint scar from her recent wound, stood rigidly before Mark. "Admiral, with all due respect, diverting resources to a prisoner extraction at this juncture is unwise. We need to focus on finding that antidote." "I understand your concerns, Commander," Mark replied, his voice firm. "But Myra's intel could be invaluable, not just for finding the medical station, but for understanding the Draxan network. Besides, we made a deal. We stick to it." He paused. "Prepare an extraction team. Use Myra's information to plan the operation. Minimize casualties." Under the cloak of a swirling nebula cloud, Rostova's strike team, aboard a heavily modified freighter, crept towards mining outpost Gamma 9. Myra's intel had been precise, detailing patrol routes and blind spots in the Draxan sensor grid. "Security is tighter than expected," Rostova's voice crackled over the comms. "The Draxan must suspect something." Myra's voice, tight with urgency, cut in. "The outpost commander, Zorn, is a sadist. He enjoys torturing prisoners if he knows you're coming." Rostova's team, a mix of hardened Marines and tech specialists, moved with practiced efficiency. They bypassed the outer defenses, using magnetic clamps to attach themselves to the hull of the outpost. A plasma torch hissed, cutting a hole into the metal plating. Inside, they moved like shadows, stun rifles raised. Draxan guards fell silently, collapsing into unconscious heaps. Rostova led the way, her movements precise and lethal. They secured the prisoner holding area with minimal resistance. The sight that greeted them was grim. The Ithorian prisoners were emaciated and weak, their bodies bearing the marks of Draxan cruelty. But their eyes lit up with a spark of hope as they saw their rescuers. As the team prepared to evacuate, alarms blared through the outpost. "Reinforcements incoming," a Marine shouted. "The commander's on his way," Rostova swore under her breath. "Time to go loud." The corridor erupted in a cacophony of stun blasts and Draxan roars. The team fought their way back towards the breach, shielding the weakened prisoners. Rostova barked orders, coordinating the defense. "Fall back, secure the landing zone, we need a window for the transport." She glanced at one of the Ithorian prisoners. "Can you fight?" The prisoner nodded. "I will fight for my freedom." Rostova's team used a series of flashbangs and smoke grenades to create a diversion, disorienting the Draxan reinforcements. The transport ship, piloted by a young, nervous lieutenant, swooped in, landing precariously close to the outpost. The freed prisoners stumbled aboard, helped by the Marines. The transport shuddered as it took heavy fire from the Draxan defenders. As the last prisoner was pulled aboard, one of them grabbed Rostova's arm. "Commander," he gasped, "the Draxan, they're using this outpost to relay encrypted communications to their fleet." Rostova's eyes narrowed. "A relay station, damn it." She turned to her second-in-command. "Set charges. We can't let them use this place anymore. Make sure it's gone." Explosions rocked the mining outpost as the transport ship blasted away, leaving behind a cloud of debris and the smoldering ruins of the Draxan communication relay. Back on the Hope, Eva received the antidote. Color slowly returned to her cheeks, and her breathing steadied. She would recover. Mark found Myra watching the freed Ithorians receive medical attention. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "You risked a lot for your people and you saved Eva's life." Myra turned to him, her expression softening slightly. "The Draxan are not to be trusted, human. Their ambition knows no bounds. They will stop at nothing to conquer and control." She paused. "Their network, it is the key to their power. They use it to control their fleets, to coordinate their attacks, to suppress dissent." Mark, Anya, and Myra huddled around a holographic display, analyzing the data gathered from the destroyed relay station. The Draxan communication network was vast and complex, a web of interconnected relay stations spanning across dozens of star systems. "It's like a central nervous system," Anya said, tracing a line across the display. "If we could disrupt it, even temporarily, we could cripple their entire war effort." "The central relay station. It's located near the Xylos Nebula," Myra said, pointing to a swirling mass of gas and dust on the display. "It is heavily guarded, almost impenetrable." Mark stared at the nebula, his mind racing. "Then that's where we need to go. We hit that relay station, we hit them where it hurts. Prepare for a long-range operation. We're going to cut the head off the snake." Myra's voice dropped, almost a whisper. "There is something you must understand about the Draxan. They are not simply conquerors. They are exterminators. A race further advanced than both the Draxan and the humans refused to cooperate with them. They were eradicated from existence. Every last one." Mark stood at the head of the holographic table, the shimmering blue light casting stark shadows across his face. "The central relay station," he said, his voice low but firm, "is the Draxan Empire's nervous system. Cut it and we cripple their ability to coordinate fleet movements, resupply efforts, everything. It's near the Altaris Nebula." Commander Rostova, her brow furrowed, spoke up. "Admiral, with respect, the Altaris relay station isn't some backwater outpost. It's a major communications hub. A full assault would be devastating, but a surgical strike. That place will be crawling with civilians. Technicians, support staff." Mark's gaze hardened, a flicker of pain crossing his features. "I'm aware of the risks, Commander. Believe me, I am. But Myra has provided intelligence that changes the equation. The Draxan are planning another major offensive. The target, Earth." He gestured to Myra, who stepped forward, a holographic schematic of the relay station materializing beside her. "These schematics," she said, her voice steady despite the visible tremor in her hands, "show key access points, security choke points, patrol routes. But more importantly, they reveal the location of the primary communication array. Destroy that and the entire network collapses. The security patrols have also been altered recently, new routes and upgraded security measure implemented." "I saw the team that did the upgrades." Anya leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "A frontal assault is suicide, but a cloaked freighter, disguised as a Draxan supply ship, We could get close enough to deploy a boarding team before they even know we're there. It's a long shot, Mark acknowledged, but it's the best chance we've got. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. In the bowels of the Dauntless, Anya and her team swarmed over a captured Draxan freighter, stripping it of its weaponry and installing a jury-rigged cloaking device. Sparks flew, energy cables crackled, and the air hung thick with the smell of ozone and burning lubricant. As Anya ran diagnostics on the cloaking field, Myra approached Mark, her expression troubled. "Admiral, there is something you should know. The security measures I showed you. They are not standard. I saw the team that upgraded the network. They were not Draxan. I don't know who they were, but they were efficient." Mark nodded grimly. "Understood. We proceed with caution." He turned to address the assembled team, Rostova standing beside him. "All right, listen up. This is a stealth op. We go in quiet, we hit hard, and we get out before they know what hit them. Rostova, you're with me. I need your experience on the ground." He surveyed the faces of the elite squad of soldiers standing before him, each one a veteran of countless battles. "We leave in 1 hour." The Stardust Drifter, a battered Draxan freighter barely held together by human ingenuity and a healthy dose of desperation, slipped silently into the void. As they approached the Altaris Nebula, a swirling vortex of cosmic dust and ionized gas, they encountered several Draxan patrols. Anya, her fingers flying across the control panel, expertly mimicked Draxan transponder signals, feeding them false identification codes and fabricated cargo manifests. "Just a routine supply run," she muttered, her voice tight with concentration. "Nothing to see here." But as they neared the relay station, a colossal structure of metal and energy that dwarfed even the largest warships, a new threat emerged. A powerful Draxan warship, its sleek, menacing hull overflowing with weaponry, materialized out of the darkness, patrolling the area. It was a design they had never seen before, a new class of warship, far more advanced than anything in the Draxan arsenal. Mark gripped the arms of his command chair, his fingers tightening. "Maintain course," he ordered, his voice betraying none of the anxiety churning in his gut. "We gamble that they won't recognize us." The Draxan warship loomed closer, its sensors sweeping across the Stardust Drifter. A harsh, metallic voice crackled over the comms system. "Unidentified vessel, this is Draxan warship Dominator. Identify yourself and prepare for scan." Anya swallowed hard, her eyes darting between the control panel and Mark. "This is Freighter Orion VII, transporting vital supplies to the Altaris relay station. Identification code." She rattled off a string of numbers, requesting permission to proceed. There was a long, agonizing pause. Then the Draxan voice returned, colder and more menacing than before. "Freighter Orion VII, your energy signature is inconsistent with your transponder code. We detect anomalies indicative of a cloaking device. Decloak immediately and prepare for boarding. We were expecting you." Mark's eyes narrowed. They knew. He turned to Rostova. "All hands prepare for combat. They're on to us." With a surge of power, the Stardust Drifter shed its cloak, revealing its true identity. Improvised weapon systems, cobbled together from salvaged parts and human ingenuity, sprang to life, unleashing a barrage of energy bolts and kinetic projectiles. The Dominator responded instantly, its turrets swiveling to target the freighter. A volley of plasma torpedoes slammed into the Stardust Drifter, crippling its engines and damaging the cloaking device beyond repair. Alarms blared, and the ship rocked violently as fires erupted throughout the vessel. "Brace for impact," Mark shouted, his voice barely audible above the din of battle. "Boarding team, prepare to breach the relay station." The Stardust Drifter, crippled but not defeated, limped towards the Altaris relay station, its boarding ramp extending towards the massive structure. The infiltration team, weapons drawn, braced themselves for the inevitable onslaught. Draxan security forces, alerted to their presence, were already converging on the boarding ramp. ready to repel the invaders. The breaching charge detonated, tearing a jagged hole in the freighter's hull. Air shrieked out, a desperate, silent scream into the void. Mark clamped his magnetic boots to the deck as the team launched grapnel lines, the magnetic clamps biting into the relay station's outer hull. They reeled themselves in, figures silhouetted against the distant Draxan homeworld, a desperate ballet against oblivion. Inside the station, alarms blared, bathing the sterile corridors in strobing red light. Draxan security forces, clad in obsidian armor, emerged from blast doors, their energy rifles spitting emerald bolts. The confined space amplified the concussive roar of the weapons. Cover was minimal, exposed conduits sparking junction boxes, the twisted wreckage of previous incursions. Suppressing fire, Rostova barked, her voice tight in Mark's ear. She unslung her modified pulse rifle, unleashing a controlled burst that forced the Draxan soldiers behind cover. "Right with me, Sharma, give us an opening." On the freighter, Anya's fingers danced across the console. Initiating sequence. Now, a series of precisely timed explosions ripped through the station's exterior, tearing apart defense turrets and disrupting energy conduits. The station shuddered, throwing sparks and debris into the corridors. The Draxan security forces returned fire with renewed ferocity. Their energy bolts ripped through the air, scorching the bulkheads and melting durasteel. The team returned fire, but the Draxan's superior numbers and firepower began to take their toll. Rounding a corner, they were met by a squad of Draxan elite guards. Energy shields shimmered before them, deflecting pulse rifle fire. Their weapons, sleek and deadly, hummed with contained power. "Elite guards," Rostova yelled. "Take them down." Mark lunged forward, drawing his combat knife. He closed the distance, dodging an energy blast, and slammed into the lead guard. The knife found its mark, piercing the guard's armor at a joint. He twisted, disabling the elite guard. Rostova moved with precision, her pulse rifle finding gaps in the energy shields, each shot perfectly aimed, each Draxan soldier falling. Myra, her Ithorian eyes scanning the station's schematics, pointed down a narrow service tunnel. "This way, it bypasses the main checkpoint." She moved with an almost unnatural grace, her knowledge of the station's layout guiding them through the maze like corridors. A searing pain tore through Mark's comm. "Right, I'm hit," Rostova gasped. An energy bolt had pierced her side, cauterizing the wound but leaving her slumped against the wall. "Go, get to the control room, I'll cover you." "Rostova, no," Mark protested, but she shoved him forward. "That's an order, Admiral, now go." With a final, defiant roar, she unleashed a torrent of fire, pinning down the Draxan guards. Mark hesitated for a moment, his heart aching, then turned and ran, Myra at his heels. They sprinted down the corridor, the echoes of Rostova's sacrifice ringing in their ears. They reached the central control room, the heart of the Draxan communication network. But their hopes were dashed. A shimmering force field, crackling with energy, blocked access to the main console. "Damn it." Mark smacked his palm against the force field. "I'm on it," Anya's voice crackled over the comm. "But the encryption is complex. Give me time." Myra examined the force field generator, her brow furrowed. "The force field is powered by a secondary generator located deep within the station." "Then that's where we're going," Mark said grimly. They plunged into the depths of the station, navigating through dimly lit corridors, the air thick with the stench of ozone and decay. Draxan patrols were frequent, their energy rifles casting long, menacing shadows. They moved like ghosts, relying on stealth and surprise to avoid detection. They stumbled upon a hidden research lab, a chamber of horrors concealed beneath the veneer of technological advancement. Humans, emaciated and broken, were strapped to tables, their skulls shaved, wires snaking from their heads into complex machinery. Draxan scientists, clad in sterile white suits, monitored the equipment with cold, clinical detachment. What in God's name? Mark breathed, his stomach churning. Myra's multifaceted eyes widened in horror. They're using them as processing units. Anya's voice, tight with fury, cut through the calm. They're tapping into their brains, using their neural networks to enhance the network's processing power, the upgrade they were talking about. Myra's voice was a bare whisper. My people. They used my people as test subjects before they used humans. Her voice broke. My brother, he was taken years ago. A wave of grief and rage washed over her, her body trembling. I'll kill them, she snarled, her hand reaching for her pulse pistol. I'll kill them all. Myra, no, Mark grabbed her arm, his voice firm. Revenge won't bring him back, we have a mission. Disrupting the network will save countless lives, that's what your brother would have wanted. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her eyes filled with tears. I know, she choked out. But, focus, Myra, Mark said, his voice gentle but firm. We need you, your knowledge, your strength, don't let them win. With a visible effort, she composed herself, her grief hardening into determination. Let's finish this. They reached the secondary generator, a massive humming machine that pulsed with raw power. Draxan scientists and security forces stood guard, their weapons trained on the entrance. Anya, any progress on disabling the force field? Mark asked. Negative, Anya replied, her voice strained. The generator is directly connected to the main reactor. If I try to shut it down remotely, it could overload the entire station. Myra's eyes widened. The reactor. My brother is in there. Myra saw a figure flicker behind the glass. That's him. He's alive. Myra surged forward, ignoring Mark's cry. I'm coming, brother. Mark grabbed her arm, stopping her in her tracks. Myra, no, he's gone. He died a long time ago. That's not him. It's a projection, a trick. Don't throw everything away for a ghost. For a ghost. Mark knelt beside Myra, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. Her Ithorian face, usually a mask of stoic calm, was contorted with grief. Tears welled in her multiple eyes, reflecting the flickering emergency lights of the disabled freighter. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of burnt wiring and the acrid scent of despair. Myra, he said softly, his voice barely a whisper above the hum of failing life support. I know the pain is unbearable, but your brother, he wouldn't want you to surrender to it. He wouldn't want you to give up. She didn't respond, her gaze fixed on some unseen horror. Mark squeezed her shoulder gently. He died fighting for something bigger than himself, Myra, for a future where your people, where all people are free. We can still make that future a reality. We will make it a reality. A tremor ran through her frame. Slowly, deliberately, she straightened, her multiple eyes focusing on Mark. The raw grief was still there, a deep well of sorrow, but beneath it, a spark of willpower flickered to life. My brother believed in you, Mark. He said you were different, that you offered hope. Her voice was raspy, strained. Then let's not disappoint him, Mark said, rising to his feet. He extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Myra took it, allowing him to help her up. Anya, Mark said, turning towards the makeshift lab crammed into a corner of the freighter. What's the status? Anya looked up from her console, her brow furrowed with concentration. I've analyzed the Draxan communication network more thoroughly, Mark. It gets worse. It seems they're using a modified version of human brainwave patterns to transmit data. It's incredibly invasive and efficient. Mark's expression darkened. Human brainwaves, how is that possible? Anya shrugged, her face grim. I don't know the specifics yet, but the implications are terrifying. It also gives us an opening. She hesitated, her gaze meeting Mark's. I think I can weaponize this, Mark. Create a feedback loop that overloads their system, a directed pulse that could cripple their communications network. Mark recoiled as if struck. Weaponize it? Anya, you're talking about using human brains to attack the Draxan, even indirectly. I won't allow it. Mark, we're talking about saving billions of lives. Anya protested, her voice rising. We can't afford to be squeamish. This is war. There are lines we don't cross, Anya, Mark countered, his voice firm. And deliberately harming minds, even Draxan minds, is one of them. Myra stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. Perhaps there is another way. The Draxan soldiers we captured, their brainwave patterns are recorded in their helmets. Could we use those? Anya considered this, tapping her fingers against the console. It's less efficient. Human brainwaves are more complex, more nuanced. Using Draxan patterns will reduce the range and power of the pulse. But it's ethical, Mark finished, his gaze meeting Myra's. Do it, Anya. Use the Draxan patterns, but I want safeguards. I don't want this technology to cause permanent harm, Anya. Disruption, yes. Lobotomies, no. Understood, Anya said, her fingers flying across the console. It'll take time to adapt the system. We don't have time, Mark countered, turning to Myra. Show me the Draxan troop deployments. Let's see if we can find a weak spot in their defenses. As Anya worked, the freighter shuddered violently. Alarms blared and the lights flickered ominously. Captain, a voice crackled over the comms. We have a problem. A Draxan patrol ship just discovered our disabled freighter. They've sent a distress signal. Mark cursed under his breath. How long until they arrive? Hard to say, sir, but it won't be long. The freighter lurched again, throwing Mark and Myra against the wall. Through the viewport, they saw a squadron of Draxan fighters materialize from hyperspace, their sleek, predatory forms silhouetted against the void. Behind them, a massive Draxan cruiser loomed, its cannons already trained on the helpless freighter. They've cut off our escape route, Myra said grimly. Anya's voice cut through the tension. Almost there. I've modified the system. It's ready to deploy. Do it, Anya, Mark ordered, his voice tight. Target the Draxan command center on Sector Gamma 9. Disrupt their communications. Anya hit the activation switch. A low hum filled the freighter as the modified brainwave device came online. On the main view screen, they watched as the Draxan command center on Sector Gamma 9 erupted in chaos. Systems flickered and died, alarms blared, and Draxan officers stumbled around in confusion. It's working, Anya exclaimed, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. But their victory was short-lived. The Draxan cruiser, its cannons blazing, opened fire on the freighter. Plasma bolts slammed into the shields, rocking the vessel violently. They know what we're doing, Myra said, her voice grim. Commander Gorok has ordered his fleet to focus on disabling the freighter. Then let's give them a fight, Mark said, grabbing a plasma rifle. Myra, man the forward cannons. Anya, keep that device running as long as you can. The freighter, despite its damage and age, responded to Myra's expert touch. Its remaining weapons spat defiance at the approaching Draxan fleet, weaving through the plasma fire with surprising agility. But the odds were overwhelming. Another direct hit sent tremors through the freighter. A shower of sparks erupted from the brainwave device, and Anya cried out in alarm. The device is damaged. It's unstable. It's going to release an uncontrolled pulse, Mark swore. An uncontrolled pulse could wipe minds, friend and foe alike. We have to shut it down. I can stabilize it, Myra said, her voice calm. But it has to be done manually. I have to reroute the power couplings. It's too dangerous, Myra, Mark protested. You could be killed. Perhaps, Myra said, her gaze meeting Mark's. But it is my responsibility. My people have suffered enough. I will not let this weapon cause more harm. Before Mark could stop her, Myra moved towards the damaged device, her face set with fierce dedication. She sealed herself inside the containment chamber, the door hissing shut behind her. Myra, no, Mark shouted, pounding on the door. Don't do this. But it was too late. Myra had already begun to manually adjust the frequency, her life hanging in the balance as the Draxan fleet continued to close in, their cannons blazing. Myra staggered, her hand flying to her throat. A ragged cough escaped her lips, flecking the console with a viscous, green fluid. The Ithorian's usually vibrant skin was now ashen, the intricate patterns of her facial markings faded. Mark was there in an instant, his arm looping around her waist, supporting her weight. Myra, what happened? His voice was tight with concern, his eyes scanning her for injuries. Stable, Stabilized, she gasped, each word a monumental effort. But, exposed. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Anya's voice cut through the tension. Admiral, the pulse was successful. We overloaded their primary command center. Reports are flooding in of widespread communication breakdowns across the Draxan fleet. Mark didn't take his eyes off Myra. Casualties. Minimal on our side, Admiral, but the Draxan, they're in disarray, however. Anya paused, her voice losing its edge of triumph. Commander Gorok is still online. He's pinpointed our location. He knows we're responsible. On the bridge of the Draxan command cruiser Devastator, Gorok smacked his fist against the console, the metal groaning under the impact. Humans, they dare to interfere. Target that freighter. All weapons, I want it vaporized. Now. His reptilian eyes narrowed, focusing on the holographic image of the battered human ship. They will pay for this insolence. Alarms blared throughout the human freighter as the first volleys of Draxan fire ripped through its shields. The ship shuddered violently, throwing Mark against the console. Sparks showered down from damaged conduits, the acrid smell of burning metal filling the air. Shields are failing, Admiral. A panicked voice crackled over the comms. We've lost primary weapons systems. Anya's voice, tight with urgency, broke in. Admiral, I've discovered something else, the disruptive pulse. It didn't just overload their systems. It created a localized dead zone in hyperspace. Nothing can enter or leave this sector. Mark's mind raced. The Draxan were trapped with them, unable to call for reinforcements or escape. It was a gamble, a desperate one, but it might be their only chance. Anya, can we exploit it? Potentially, sir, but the effect is unstable. The Draxan will be working to break through. We don't have much time. Reroute all available power to the engines, Mark ordered, his voice firm despite the chaos around him. Prepare for a jump. We're going to punch through that blockade. On the Devastator, Gorok anticipated the humans' move. They're going to try to escape, realign the fleet, form an intercept pattern, don't let them get away. The Draxan cruisers shifted, forming a deadly wall of firepower between the human freighter and the edge of the hyperspace dead zone. Mark turned back to Myra, who was struggling to sit upright. You need to rest, Myra. You're in no condition to fight. Myra shook her head, her eyes burning with fierce tenacity. Rest. My people are dying out there, Mark. I will not rest. I must help. Help how? You can barely stand. I know their ships, Mark. I know their layouts, their weaknesses. I can create a diversion, give you the opening you need to slip through their blockade. Anya approached, carrying a bulky Draxan environmental suit. I've modified a plasma cutter, Myra. It's not much, but it'll cut through their hull plating. Myra nodded, accepting the suit. The consequences of her actions were dire. Mark grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly strong. Don't do this, Myra. You're too weak. It's suicide. His voice was raw with emotion, his eyes pleading with her. I can't lose you. Myra placed her hand over his, her touch surprisingly gentle. A weak but determined smile touched her lips. You won't lose me, Mark. Not if we win, and my people. They are relying on us. As Anya helped Myra into the Draxan suit, she secretly modified the device, adding a subroutine to target Draken ships, but didn't tell Mark. Sealed in the bulky armor, Myra looked almost alien, yet her eyes still shone with the same unwavering persistence. She activated the plasma cutter, the blue energy blade humming to life. With a final look at Mark, she moved towards the airlock. Mark watched her go, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he couldn't stop her. He could only pray that she would survive. He prepared to make a desperate jump through the blockade, unaware of what will happen when the engine couplings on the Draken cruisers explode. The scream of tortured metal filled the freighter as Myra severed the last power coupling. A blue-white arc erupted, followed by a concussive blast that rattled the ship down to its rivets. Alarms blared, their shrill cries joining the cacophony. The Draxan cruiser, now a wounded beast, lost power to its engines. It spun wildly, a multi-ton hazard drifting helplessly out of formation, disrupting the precise ballet of the Draken fleet. "Now, Mark, now." Anya's voice crackled over the comms. Mark gripped the controls, his fingers tightening. Engaging jump sequence. He slammed the activation rune. The freighter shuddered, the damaged engines groaning in protest as they strained to generate sufficient power for the hyperspace jump. The ship lurched violently as it entered the dead zone, a region of distorted space where reality frayed at the edges. Hull plates screamed and sparks rained down from overhead conduits. The freighter bucked like a wild bronco, threatening to tear itself apart. Trajectory unstable. Anya shouted, her voice tight with strain. "We're being pulled apart, Mark." "We need more power to the navigation array." Mark's eyes sharp. "Reroute power from life support to navigation." "Now, Anya." Anya hesitated, "But the crew." "Survival first, Anya. We can't save anyone if we're all dead." In the Draken command vessel, Gorak watched in disbelief as one of his cruisers spiraled out of control. The humans were escaping. He snarled, his mandibles clicking in fury. The irony that it was Myra who was causing the most damage never crossed his mind. "Focus fire on that freighter," he roared. "Do not let them escape." Plasma bolts hammered into the freighter's shields, each impact sending violent tremors through the ship. Fires erupted in sections 4 and 6, licking at exposed wiring and melting durasteel. Anya fought desperately to contain the blazes, her hands flying across the damaged control panel. Sweat plastered her hair to her forehead as she simultaneously rerouted power and prayed for the jump to stabilize. "All non-essential personnel, report to damage control." "That is not a request." Mark's voice boomed over the ship's intercom. "We need to keep this ship intact, people." Unbeknownst to anyone on the freighter, Myra's device was slowly emitting a disruptive signal. On the other Draken ships, systems flickered, targeting arrays wavered, and shields pulsed erratically. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the cumulative effect was beginning to degrade their combat effectiveness. Mark squinted at the tactical display. "Anya, are their weapons systems glitching?" "They seem sluggish." "I'm reading some interference, but nothing major," Anya replied, preoccupied with the fires. "Probably just the dead zone playing tricks on our sensors." "Anya, the dead zone is collapsing." Anya shouted. "They're going to be able to call for reinforcements." With a final, agonizing groan, the freighter ripped through the fabric of spacetime and emerged into real space. But their relief was short-lived. Before them lay a scene of utter devastation. A shattered planet, its surface scarred and broken, a testament to some ancient cataclysm. The planet's gravity well was a relentless hand, dragging the crippled freighter towards its doom. Alarms screamed, warning of imminent atmospheric entry. The freighter was a wreck. Power was fluctuating wildly, fires raged unchecked, and the Draxan fleet was closing in, eager to finish what they had started. "Anya, scanned that planet," Mark barked. "Anything, resources, salvage, anything that can help us." "I'm detecting a faint energy signature, Mark," Anya replied, her voice strained. Deep underground, heavily shielded, could be a power source, or something else entirely. Mark stared at the pursuing Draxan ships, then back at the ruined planet. A chilling realization dawned on him. Their desperate jump hadn't brought them to safety. It had brought them to a graveyard, a place where hope went to die. This planet hadn't been destroyed by some random natural disaster. It was a tomb, and they were about to become its newest residents. The hum of the freighter intensified, a deep thrumming that vibrated through the deck plating. "Admiral," Anya's voice crackled over the comms, "I've pinpointed the source of that energy signature. It's coming from a heavily shielded underground facility, approximately 5 kilometers southwest of your current position." Mark, already moving towards the launch bay, barked orders over his shoulder. "Prep a reconnaissance team. I want eyes on that facility, fast and quiet. No unnecessary risks." Within minutes, a small team, clad in dark, repurposed Draxan armor, launched in a modified shuttle. The shuttle skimmed low over the ruined landscape, the only sound the whisper of its repulsor lifts. As they approached the coordinates, the terrain shifted. Jagged metal spikes erupted from the ground, and energy weapons swiveled into view, tracking their every move. "Admiral, the facility entrance is sealed," the team leader reported. "Automated defenses are active. We're detecting multiple energy weapon emplacements and anti-aircraft turrets." Anya's voice cut through the tension. "I'm analyzing their systems now. There's a potential bypass, but it's risky. Requires a manual override at the main control nexus." Mark didn't hesitate. "I'll lead the override mission. Myra, you're with me. Your knowledge of Draxon systems could be the difference between success and a quick death." Myra nodded, her face grim. "I know the weaknesses of their ships, not necessarily their ground defenses, but I will help." As Mark and Myra geared up, alarms blared throughout the freighter. "Admiral, we have multiple Draxon contacts inbound." Anya's voice was tight with urgency. "They're initiating an attack run." The freighter shuddered violently as energy blasts slammed against its shields. Red lights flashed and the acrid smell of burning circuits filled the air. "Anya, what's the status of the shields?" Mark shouted, struggling to maintain his balance. "They're holding, but barely." Anya replied, "I'm redirecting power from life support to reinforce them, but that's going to reduce our oxygen reserves. You need to hurry." The air grew noticeably thinner, carrying with it the metallic tang of recycled water and ozone. Mark and Myra launched in a heavily armored transport, hugging the ground to avoid detection. They reached the facility entrance. A massive blast door sealed shut with multiple energy locks. The automated turrets tracked them relentlessly, forcing them to take cover behind the transport. Myra worked feverishly, inputting override codes into a portable terminal. Almost there," she grunted. With a final keystroke, the blast door hissed open, revealing a dark, cavernous tunnel. "We're in," Mark reported, "but I think we just tripped an internal alarm." Klaxons wailed and red lights pulsed within the tunnel. They moved quickly, navigating the labyrinthine corridors. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of ozone and decay. They reached a central chamber filled with deactivated consoles and strange, humming machinery. "This was a research lab," Myra said, her voice hushed. "They were studying something powerful and unstable." She moved to a console, her fingers flying across the controls. "Wait, I recognize this energy signature. It's similar to what they used on Ither, but amplified." "Amplified how?" Mark asked, his hand resting on his sidearm. "I don't know," Myra said, her voice shaking. "But whatever it is, it's what destroyed this planet." She paused, her eyes widening. "The bioweapon. The one I implanted in the Draxon ships. It's reacting to this energy source. That is why their ships are malfunctioning and dying." "Can you warn them?" Mark asked. Myra tried to use the console to send a message, but shook her head. "The Draken network is down. I sabotaged it to keep them from calling for reinforcements. There's no way to reach them." A low rumble shook the facility. "The unstable energy source. It's the cause of this planet's destruction, a failed experiment," Mark said, "if it's left unchecked." He spotted a control console at the far end of the chamber, bathed in an eerie green glow. That console, it might be able to harness the energy, stabilize it. "It's too dangerous," Myra protested. "We need to get out of here." "We don't have a choice," Mark said, his voice grim. "If that energy is released, it could destroy the entire system." He approached the console, his fingers tracing the complex symbols etched into its surface. "It requires a complex activation sequence. One wrong move." As he began the sequence, the facility's internal defenses activated. Energy surged through the corridors and the ground trembled violently. The air crackled with electricity and the smell of burning metal intensified. Myra noticed something on a nearby monitor. "Mark, look, the Draken ships are beginning to explode." "I'm almost there." Mark muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. He entered the final command. The console hummed and a beam of pure energy shot into the heart of the facility. "I did it," he exclaimed. But his triumph was short-lived. The facility groaned and cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. "It's not stable," Myra shouted. "You've triggered a chain reaction. The facility is going to collapse." Anya's voice crackled over the comms. "Admiral, the Draxan ships are getting close to the freighter again. They're preparing another attack run." Mark glanced around the collapsing facility, his eyes scanning for an escape route. There was none. The unstable energy source pulsed with increasing intensity, threatening to engulf them all. The blast door, their only means of escape, was sealed shut. He looked at Myra, her face etched with fear and persistence. "I have an idea," he said, his voice grim. "A crazy one." "What is it?" Myra asked. "I can reroute the excess energy from this dying facility's energy core to the freighter's engines," Mark said. "It's the only way to give them enough power to escape. But if I fail, the freighter, the Draken ships, and us will be destroyed." Mark yanked the final conduit into place, the emergency klaxons blaring louder than ever. He rerouted the energy flow, initiating a surge that violently shook the facility. Metal groaned, sparks flew, and the air crackled with raw power. "Left, left! Bypass the primary regulator," Myra shouted over the din, her Ithorian vocal sacs vibrating with urgency. She guided Mark, her smaller hand surprisingly strong on his arm, using her intimate knowledge of Draken energy systems to stabilize the transfer. The energy surge, raw and untamed, overloaded some of the facility's systems. Explosions rocked the structure, sending shrapnel flying. Sections of the ceiling peeled away, revealing twisted metal and sparking wires. Further down the corridor, a support beam buckled, threatening a total collapse. Communications cut out completely, the console screens flickering and dying, leaving Mark and Myra isolated in the heart of the dying facility. Anya's voice crackled in Mark's helmet comm. "Mark, power levels are spiking. We're drawing everything. The freighter, it's alive." The freighter received a massive power boost, causing the engines to roar to life, a sound that vibrated through their boots, but the hull creaked and groaned under the strain. "Shields!" Mark yelled into his comm, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Still failing. Draken ships are still approaching." Anya replied, her voice tight with anxiety. Mark grabbed Myra's hand. "Move, now." They sprinted through the collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris and leaping over sparking wires. A section of the ceiling gave way directly in front of them, sending a shower of concrete and metal crashing down. They dove into a maintenance hatch, narrowly avoiding being crushed. They reached the surface just as the facility imploded, a cataclysmic event that swallowed the entire structure in a ball of fire and twisted metal. A shockwave ripped outwards, throwing them to the ground. The freighter, with its engines boosted beyond their design limits, managed to outrun the shockwave, pulling away from the planet's surface. A Draken ship caught too close to the implosion exploded nearby, sending burning debris tumbling towards the freighter. "Mark, we have a problem." Anya's voice was tinged with panic. "The energy surge worked too well. We've overcharged the engines. They're going to blow." "Anya, divert the remaining energy. Send out a distress signal to Earth. Let them know what happened where we are." Mark ordered, his mind racing. If the engines blew, they wouldn't even make it to hyperspace. As Anya worked frantically, Myra pointed towards the wreckage of the destroyed Draken ship. "Look." Through the flickering flames, Mark saw figures slumped inside the Draken cockpits. "What happened?" "Bioweapon," Myra said grimly. "Zargoth used it before, on planets he wanted to subdue. Makes the population compliant, or kills them. Looks like it backfired. The Draken ships had a bioweapon on board, and it was now killing their own pilots, a horrifying testament to Zargoth's ruthlessness. The explosions from the Draken ships created a gap in the pursuing Draken ships, a narrow window of opportunity. Anya now jumped to hyperspace." The freighter shuddered violently as it engaged the hyperdrive, tearing a hole in space-time. Anya's voice, weak but triumphant, affirmed, "We're in. We're safely in hyperspace. But her elation was short-lived. Life support systems, they're failing rapidly. We took too much damage. Mark and Myra raced through the damaged freighter, assessing the situation. Hull breaches hissed, venting precious atmosphere into the void. Emergency lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows. We need to prioritize, Mark said, his voice grim. Life support repairs first. Ration the remaining supplies. As they worked, patching leaks and rerouting power, they detected a faint distress signal. Another ship, Myra said, her fingers flying across the console. Refugees, fleeing Zargoth's attack on their homeworld. Mark stared at the screen, his face etched with concern. The freighter was already crippled, its resources stretched to the breaking point. Taking on more passengers would almost certainly doom them all. How many? Hundreds, Myra replied, her voice barely a whisper. Mark closed his eyes, his legs shaking. He could leave them behind, increase their own chances of survival. It was the logical choice, the only rational option. But the faces of his lost family flashed before his eyes, the memory of their desperate pleas for help echoing in his ears. He opened his eyes, his gaze hardening with dedication. "Prepare to receive them," he said, his voice firm. "We'll take them on." Myra looked at him, her expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "Mark, we barely have enough for ourselves." "I know," Mark said, "but we're not Draken. We don't leave people to die." He paused, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. "It'll be a huge burden, but it's what makes us human." The freighter, battered and bruised, limped towards the nearest human outpost, carrying its precious cargo of refugees and facing dwindling resources. The journey would be long and arduous, but aboard that ship, in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's light still flickered, refusing to be extinguished. The air hung thick and stale in the freighter's cargo hold, a metallic tang clinging to the back of Mark's throat. Oxygen levels were plummeting, the emergency klaxons bleating a mournful dirge that echoed the growing despair. Flickering emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows, turning the makeshift refugee camp into a macabre stage. "Anya, status report." Mark barked into his comm, his voice strained. Static crackled in response. "Oxygen scrubbers are failing, Mark. I'm rerouting power, but it's a temporary fix. I'm sending emergency repair instructions now. It's complex, and you're critically low on the necessary components." On the flickering holographic display, a schematic of the freighter's antiquated life support system swam into view, a spiderweb of pipes and valves that looked impossibly intricate. Myra, her four throats working in unison to process the thinning air, leaned closer, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Draken engineering," she rasped, her voice hoarse. "Inefficient, but brutally effective when maintained." Mark sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "All right, let's get to work. Myra, can you translate this mess into something we can use?" He turned to the assembled crew and refugees, his voice regaining its authority. "All right, people, listen up. We need to get these scrubbers back online. Every breath counts. Johnson, get the welding torches ready. Patel, start scavenging for spare parts. Anything that looks remotely useful, grab it." Chaos erupted as people scrambled to follow his orders, the sounds of clanging metal and desperate voices filling the cargo hold. But amidst the frenzy, a dissenting voice cut through the noise. Admiral Wright. A grizzled human veteran, his face etched with years of hard fighting, pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His name was Krell, and he carried himself with the weary authority of someone who'd seen too much death. "With all due respect, sir, this is a fool's errand. We don't have the resources to save everyone. We need to prioritize. Focus on those most likely to survive." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Fear, raw and palpable, hung in the air. Mark's eyes hardened. "I understand your concerns, Krell, but we don't leave people behind. That's not who we are." "Who we were, sir," Krell countered, his voice hardening. "Before the Draken, before this charity mission. Reality is biting us now. Hard choices have to be made." He gestured to a group of wounded refugees huddled in a corner. Those people are already dying. Every drop of oxygen we waste on them is oxygen we're taking from someone who has a chance. Mark met Krell's gaze, his own unwavering. I won't do it, Krell. I won't play executioner. We'll find a way to save everyone. That's a promise. He knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep, but he couldn't bring himself to say otherwise. Myra, who had been observing the exchange with her multifaceted eyes, stepped forward. The veteran speaks with a pragmatism born of war, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. My people, the Draken often forced us to make such choices. Resource allocation. A tool of oppression used to break spirits and identify the weakest. She paused, her gaze hardening. I remember. One rationing cycle. My younger sister, Alara, was sick. She needed medicine, but the Draken overseers, they deemed her unworthy. They withheld the medication, claiming it was needed for more productive citizens. She died. Gasping for breath, just like this freighter will be soon. Myra's typically even tone wavered with the memory. Mark felt a pang of guilt, realizing he knew so little about the Ithorian people and the horrors they had endured. He reached out, placing a hand gently on Myra's arm. I'm sorry, Myra. I want to understand. Tell me about your people, your traditions. What did you value before? Before the Draken took everything, Myra looked up at him, surprised by his genuine interest. We Ithorians, we revere nature. We are pacifists by nature. We believe in balance, in harmony. We're a people of song and dance, of intricate tapestries woven from the threads of the forest. The Draken, they shattered our world. They turned our forests into mines, our songs into cries of despair. Suddenly, Anya's voice crackled urgently over the comm. Mark, I've got another problem, a big one. I've been running diagnostics on the refugees, and I've detected traces of a Draken bioweapon. It's dormant but active. It's causing a slow, debilitating illness. Mark's blood ran cold. How contagious is it? Highly airborne, it could spread through the entire ship in a matter of hours. The impossible choices kept piling up. What are our options, Anya? Containment, strict quarantine, but the infected refugees are already weak. Isolation, it might kill them. Another wave of panic swept through the cargo hold. Krell stepped forward, his eyes narrowed. Admiral, you heard her. Quarantine now, before it's too late. Mark closed his eyes, the weight of command crushing him. He couldn't condemn those refugees to a slow, agonizing death, but he couldn't risk the lives of everyone else on board either. All right, he said, his voice hoarse. We'll implement a quarantine protocol. Section off Deck C, seal it off completely. But we'll provide them with the best care we can. Medicine, food, whatever they need. I promise you I won't abandon them. The quarantine was swift and brutal. Makeshift barriers were erected, sealing off Deck C the infected refugees. Their faces, etched with fear and confusion, were herded into the isolated zone. As the barriers slammed shut, cries of protest and pleas for help echoed through the freighter. That night, unable to sleep, Mark walked to the edge of the quarantine zone. He could hear the muffled sobs and desperate whispers through the metal walls. Taking a deep breath, he activated the comm system. This is Admiral Wright, he said, his voice amplified throughout Deck C. I know you're scared. I know you feel abandoned, but I want you to know that you're not alone. We're doing everything we can to help you. I promise you we won't give up. He spoke for hours, sharing stories of hope and resilience, offering words of comfort and reassurance. He risked his own health, breathing the potentially contaminated air, just to let them know they were not forgotten. As he listened to their stories, a chilling pattern emerged. The illness seemed to progress differently in the Ithorian refugees. It was slower, less aggressive. A flicker of hope ignited in Mark's mind. He contacted Myra. Myra, the bioweapon, it's affecting the Ithorians differently. Why? Myra thought for a moment, her brow furrowed. It could be our physiology. We are more resilient to certain toxins, or perhaps there is an herb, a rare plant that grows only on Ither, the tears of Isha. It has restorative properties. It could counteract the effects of the bioweapon. Where does it grow? Mark asked, his voice filled with urgency. Only in the Whispering Caves, on Ither, a sacred place. Ither, a planet firmly within Draken territory. Before he could respond, Anya's voice cut through the comms. Mark, incoming, Draken patrol ship heading straight for our location, ETA 10 minutes. Mark felt a wave of dread wash over him. It was all happening too fast. He turned to Myra, his face grim. We need to figure out why they are here and fast. The human outpost, Myra said, her voice barely a whisper. The one you were heading to, it's not a safe haven, it's a trap. Zargoth sent you there to be destroyed, this whole rescue operation. It was a setup. Mark stared at the sensor readings, the realization slamming into him like a physical blow. It's a trap, he muttered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Myra's multifaceted eyes narrowed, a lifetime of subjugation etched into the lines around them. Of course it is. What did you expect? The Draxan Empire doesn't offer charity, only chains. Her voice dripped with a cold cynicism that chilled Mark more than the failing life support. A klaxon blared through the hope, its strident tone cutting through the tense silence. Draken patrol ship exiting hyperspace bearing 22 Mark 7. Anya's voice crackled over the comms, filled with urgency. Designation, Annihilator, Heavy Destroyer class. Advanced sensors and weapons, Captain. This isn't going to be easy. The main viewscreen flickered to life, displaying a brutal wedge of armored hull overflowing with weapon emplacements. The Annihilator. Its name was apt. Mark felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. Engage the destroyer and risk the hope and everyone on board. Or try to run, potentially sacrificing the infected. The refugees, sensing the shift in atmosphere, began to murmur, their fear palpable. We should jump. The veteran from engineering barked, pushing his way to the front of the crowd. His face was gaunt, his eyes wild. We can't fight that thing, those people are already dead, save us. He jabbed a trembling finger towards the makeshift quarantine bay. You led us into a death trap, Admiral. I knew we shouldn't have trusted you. Mark clenched his teeth, ignoring the rising tide of panic. Anya, status report. Weapons online. Barely, Captain. Shields are at 40% and failing fast. Engines are overheating. A direct confrontation is suicide. Then we don't confront, Mark said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his gut. Anya, can we evade? There's an asteroid field dead ahead, Captain. Dense debris. We could try to mask our energy signature, slip past them, but it's a suicide run in this condition. One wrong move and we're space dust. Mark closed his eyes for a moment, picturing the asteroid field a graveyard of shattered rock and metal. A desperate gamble, but they were out of options. He trusted Anya's judgment. He had to. Do it, Anya. All ahead, full. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Myra stepped forward, her expression unreadable. There is one other thing. I sabotaged a Draken cloaking device before I was captured. It's jury-rigged, unstable. It will only hold for a short time, but it might give us an edge. As the Hope plunged into the asteroid field, the Annihilator opened fire. Emerald bolts of energy lanced through space, vaporizing asteroids and sending shrapnel hurtling in all directions. The Hope shuddered violently as a near miss slammed into its shields, knocking out the auxiliary power. Life support is failing, Captain. Anya yelled over the din. Oxygen levels are dropping. Mark wrestled with the controls, his fist clenched. Myra, her movements precise and efficient, worked alongside him, calling out corrections and warnings. Asteroids loomed, a chaotic dance of destruction. One grazed the Hope's starboard nacelle, sending sparks flying and further weakening the already strained structure. Suddenly, Anya's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, I'm picking up a weak signal emanating from a nearby asteroid. It's Draken, possibly a small outpost or mining facility. Mark's mind raced. An outpost. It could hold supplies, maybe even the Ithorian herb. but it also meant diverting from their escape route, risking a direct confrontation with Draken forces. A fool's errand, or their only hope. Meanwhile, aboard his flagship, Emperor Zargoth watched the Hope's desperate struggle on the main view screen, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Fools," he hissed. "They walk willingly into my snare." The human threat ends here. He underestimated the human spirit. He had always underestimated it. Back on the Hope, Myra cursed. "The damage. It's destabilized the cloaking device. It's failing." Mark didn't hesitate. "Anya, reroute power to engines. We're going for that asteroid." He gripped the controls, his eyes blazing with a fierce persistence. "We may not win this fight," he said, his voice ringing with conviction, "but we are going to make him pay for ever thinking of hurting us." The Hope shuddered as it threaded the needle through a narrow gap in the asteroid field. Ahead, a gray, pockmarked rock, larger than any they had yet encountered, loomed into view. Sensors painted a picture of a small, automated Draken mining operation clinging to its surface, its drills gnawing relentlessly at the asteroid's mineral-rich core. A low, rhythmic hum vibrated through the Hope's hull, a constant reminder of the enemy's presence. "Admiral," Anya's voice crackled over the comm, infused with urgency, "life support is degrading faster than anticipated. Oxygen levels are expected to reach critical in approximately 4 hours. 4 hours, Mark clenched his teeth. "Understood, Doctor. Prepare for immediate landing. We need to find that herb now." He turned to the helm. "Plot a course for a stealth landing near the mining facility. Keep us out of their sensor range if possible." The Hope eased closer, using the asteroid's bulk as cover. Landing struts engaged with a metallic groan as the ship settled onto a relatively flat surface, shrouded in shadow. The airlock hissed open. Myra, her usually stoic face etched with concern, pointed towards the facility. "The power source. It's a localized generator, likely fueled by refined minerals. There's a vulnerability in its cooling system. If we could disable it." "It would cut power to the whole facility," Mark finished, his mind already racing. "But it would also alert them." "Worth the risk," Myra said, her voice firm. "It could buy us time and create a diversion." Mark nodded. "Agreed. Anya, you're in command of the Hope. Keep the shields up, manage the life support, and watch for Draken patrols. We'll be in touch." He checked his pulse rifle, the familiar weight reassuring in his hands. "Let's move." A small team, consisting of Mark, Myra, and 2 security officers, emerged from the airlock and moved towards the mining facility. The asteroid's surface was a desolate landscape of jagged rocks and metallic dust, illuminated by the harsh glare of the facility's floodlights. As they approached the entrance, a narrow tunnel bored into the asteroid's side, a series of automated security drones whirred to life, their optical sensors swiveling to lock onto the intruders. "Contact!" one of the security officers yelled, raising his rifle. The drones opened fire, bolts of blue energy searing through the air. The team dove for cover behind a cluster of rocks, returning fire. The confined space amplified the sounds of the firefight, the staccato bursts of pulse rifles, the sizzling impacts of energy weapons against rock, the metallic shriek of ricocheting rounds. 2 drones were quickly disabled, their optical sensors shattered, but more were emerging from the tunnel. "We can't stay here," Mark shouted over the din. "We need to get inside." They pressed forward, using their superior training and coordination to overcome the remaining drones. As they breached the tunnel entrance, Mark noticed something odd, a faint tremor in the rock, a subtle shift in the air pressure. "This way," he said, pointing towards a side passage that wasn't marked on their schematics. "I think there's more to this mining operation than meets the eye." The passage led them deeper into the asteroid, the air growing warmer and more humid. The rhythmic hum of the mining equipment intensified, vibrating through their bones. As they rounded a corner, they emerged into a vast, hidden chamber, illuminated by rows of artificial lights. The sight that greeted them was both wondrous and disturbing. Rows upon rows of Ithorian herbs, their broad, vibrant leaves glowing with an ethereal light, were cultivated in hydroponic vats. But interspersed among the herbs were strange, metallic devices, intricate networks of pipes, wires, and glowing crystals. Myra gasped, her eyes wide with horror. This isn't just a mining facility. They're experimenting on the herbs. She approached one of the devices, her multi-lobed hands trembling as she examined its components. This equipment, they're trying to amplify the herb's properties, to weaponize it. A sudden klaxon blared through the chamber, bathing the room in a pulsating red light. Intruders detected, intruders detected. We've been spotted, Mark yelled. Move, move. A squad of Draken soldiers clad in black armor burst into the chamber, their weapons raised. The team scattered, taking cover behind the hydroponic vats. Another firefight erupted, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burning vegetation. During the chaos, Mark was separated from Myra and the others. He found himself alone, pinned down behind a lane. The Draken soldiers closing in. He risked a glance around the corner and saw the others disappearing down a narrow corridor. He took a breath, steeled himself, and charged out from behind the vat, firing his pulse rifle. He managed to take down one Draken soldier before being forced to dive for cover again. Meanwhile, Myra and the remaining security officers located a small storage room. Inside, they found a cache of the unmodified Ithorian herb, carefully sealed in protective containers. This is enough, Myra said, her voice tight with relief. Enough to help those who are infected. Suddenly, a Draken scientist, clad in a white lab coat, emerged from the shadows, wielding a strange energy weapon. You will not take what belongs to the Empire. Back in the main chamber, Mark was ambushed. The Draken scientist fired the weapon, a beam of crackling green energy searing through the air. Mark barely had time to react, throwing himself to the side as the beam struck his shoulder. Agony ripped through him, his vision blurring. The scientist cackled, raising the weapon for another shot, but the device began to sputter and crackle, the energy beam flickering erratically. The weapon overloaded, exploding in a shower of sparks and molten metal, killing the scientist instantly. Mark collapsed to the ground, clutching his shoulder, the pain overwhelming. The modified Ithorian energy seared through his nerves. At that moment, Myra and the security officers burst back into the chamber. They saw Mark lying on the ground, unconscious, the Draken scientist's body nearby. Myra's eyes darted between Mark and the storage room containing the herb. Could she save them all or just complete her mission? She looked at Mark's prone form, the blood seeping through his uniform. She remembered his unwavering belief in her, his willingness to risk everything to help her people. She made her choice. "Help me get him back to the ship," she yelled, grabbing Mark under the arms. Together they dragged him towards the exit, the Draken soldiers hot on their heels. As they reached the Hope, the cloaking device sputtered and died, the ship's silhouette shimmering into view. A Draken patrol ship, a sleek black destroyer, emerged from behind a nearby asteroid, its weapons charging. The Hope was immediately targeted. High-energy weapons fire slammed into the ship's shields, sending tremors through the hull. "Admiral, shields are failing." Anya's voice was frantic. "We're taking heavy damage. Life support is critical. Doctor, report." Myra yelled as they dragged Mark through the airlock. "The herb, it's working." Anya replied, her voice strained but hopeful. "The infected are stabilizing. They're on their way to the bridge to assist, but the Hope won't survive a direct hit." Suddenly, a new signal blared across the comm system, garbled and weak, but just audible above the chaos. It was a distress call. "Help trapped, asteroid field, Draken." The signal faded in and out, lost in static. "Incoming, Draken destroyer locking on, shields down to 12%. Anya's voice cracked with urgency, the klaxon blaring a discordant counterpoint. Mark groaned, a searing pain lancing through his side. The energy weapon had burned deep. He fought to focus, the acrid smell of ozone and burning metal stinging his nostrils. "Get me to the bridge," he rasped, the words catching in his throat. "I need to see." Myra, her brow furrowed with concern, gently pressed another poultice of the Ithorian herb against the wound. "Admiral, you need to rest. This energy, it's unlike anything I've encountered. It's disrupting your natural healing abilities." He gripped her hand, his gaze unwavering. "The hope needs me, Myra. Help me up." He leaned heavily on her as they made their way to the bridge, each step a battle against the pain that threatened to pull him under. Anya swiveled in her chair as they approached, her face etched with worry. "Admiral, I have an idea, a risky one. The asteroid field. We could use it for cover. It's the only way to break their lock, but one wrong move and we're space dust." Mark surveyed the tactical display, the Hope's dwindling shield strength a stark red line. "Can we do it, Lieutenant? Our pilots are the best in the fleet, sir, but it's a gamble." He nodded, the decision weighing heavily. Lives hung in the balance. "Do it. All power to engines. Let's give them a ride through hell." The Hope lurched violently as the pilot, Lieutenant Thompson, threw the ship into a daring maneuver, dodging a volley of Draken fire by a hair's breadth. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic jumble of rock and ice. The destroyer was relentless, its energy cannons spitting bolts of emerald fire that chipped away at the Hope's already battered hull. A direct hit sent tremors through the ship. "Hull breach, Section 4. A frantic voice echoed over the comms, oxygen levels dropping. Anya adjusted her console, her fingers flying across the keys. "Rerouting life support. We're losing atmosphere fast. I'm rationing oxygen to essential personnel only." Mark winced, the air already thinning. He coughed, his lungs burning. "Lieutenant, keep us moving." "Anya, what about that distress signal? Anything?" Anya shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "Still faint, Admiral, but I'm isolating the frequency. Give me a minute." The Hope twisted and turned, a desperate dance through the asteroid field. Another impact rocked the ship, throwing Mark against the console. "I've got something." Anya exclaimed, her fingers still flying over the console. Coordinates, and a fragmented audio message. Static crackled through the speakers, followed by a desperate plea. "Argonaut, research vessel, Draken ambush, crippled, requesting immediate assistance." Anya amplified the signal, revealing more of the message. They claimed to be a research vessel, the Argonaut, studying the asteroid field. They were ambushed by a Draken patrol weeks ago and are now crippled. Mark frowned, his mind racing. "A research vessel, not part of the Draken fleet." "That's what they say, sir." The implications were clear. Helping the Argonaut would mean diverting resources, slowing their escape, and potentially exposing themselves to further attack. But ignoring their plea meant condemning them to certain death. Myra stepped forward, her voice firm. "Admiral, we have to help them. If they're researchers, they might have knowledge, resources. Anything that could aid us against the Empire." Anya glanced up from her console. "Admiral, the Ithorian herb is only stabilizing him. It won't be effective long-term. We need a proper medical facility or he won't survive." Mark closed his eyes, the weight of the decision crushing him. He could feel the Hope shuddering around him, the dwindling oxygen stinging his lungs. He looked at Myra, at Anya, at the faces of his crew, etched with exhaustion and fear. "Anya," he said, his voice regaining its strength. "Reroute power to the damaged cloaking device. All of it. We're going to try and mask our approach." "But Admiral, that will leave us even more vulnerable." Anya protested. "It's a gamble, Lieutenant, but we don't have a choice. We're not leaving them to die." As the Hope limped towards the Argonaut's coordinates, the cloaking device flickering erratically, they found the research vessel. It was a mangled wreck, its hull breached in multiple places, surrounded by a field of Draken mines. Another distress signal crackled over the comms, weaker than the last. "Life support failing. Please, help." Then a sharp ping sounded from the sensors. "Admiral," Anya shouted, her eyes wide with alarm. "Draken patrol ship decloaking behind us, and the destroyer, It's exiting warp. Mark, despite the pain tearing through him, straightened in his chair. Prepare for battle, weapons hot. We're not going down without a fight. He looked at the tactical display, then back at his crew. But we're going to need the support of the crew of the Argonaut to survive. The Draken destroyer unleashed a barrage of plasma fire. Alarms blared throughout the Hope as Anya wrestled with the controls, throwing the ship into a dizzying series of evasive maneuvers. "Damn it!" she yelled, her fist clenched as she gripped the yoke. The mining field, once a potential shield, had become a claustrophobic maze. Each explosion of a proximity mine rattled the Hope's already weakened hull. Anya rerouted power to the mining scanner, its sensors now painting a fleeting, flickering map of clear paths through the minefield. "Here's your ticket out of this mess, you overgrown lizard," she muttered, deploying a countermeasure pulse. A chain reaction erupted as the pulse detonated a string of mines directly in the path of the pursuing destroyer. "They're trying to flank us." Mark's voice, strained with pain, cut through the chaos. He braced himself against a bulkhead, his face pale. Sensor readings indicate a Draken patrol ship preparing to launch boarding pods. "Internal defense turrets," Myra said urgently, her voice tight with a controlled fear. "Reroute power from life support. It's the only way to guarantee we can repel them." Mark hesitated for a split second, weighing the odds. Oxygen levels would plummet, but a boarding action. That would be a death sentence for everyone. "Do it, Myra. Reroute the power." The ship shuddered as power surged to the turrets. The air grew noticeably thinner. Outside, the turrets spat a furious stream of plasma, obliterating several boarding pods before they could reach the Hope. But some got through, slamming against the hull with sickening thuds. The telltale hiss of cutting torches echoed through the ship. Then, a garbled transmission crackled over the comms. "Hope, this is the Argonaut. We are under attack. Draken scavengers are looting our research." The voice was desperate, panicked. "Argonaut, what's your status?" Mark barked into the comm. A different voice, calmer but imbued with DRAR, responded. "This is Dr. Ilara Vaughn, xenoanthropologist. We're a small crew, many injured. We can't fend them off for long." "They're not after us, they're after our research." Mark's mind raced. The destroyer wasn't just trying to eliminate them, it was protecting the scavengers looting the Argonaut. "Myra, who are these scavengers?" Myra's face paled, her hands trembled slightly. The Crimson Talons, they are brutal. They are known for torturing their victims. They enjoy it." Her voice broke. Mark felt a cold dread grip him. He couldn't leave the Argonaut crew to that fate, but the Hope was barely holding together. He had to make a choice. "Anya, can you hold them off?" Anya's voice, strained but determined, came over the comms. "I'll give them hell, Mark, but I can't promise anything. My shields are almost non-existent." "Prepare a boarding shuttle," Mark said, his voice grim. "We're going to rescue the Argonaut crew." "What? Are you crazy?" Anya's voice rose in pitch. "You can't leave me here alone with that destroyer." "I don't have a choice, Anya. Those people need our help." Mark turned to Myra. "You're with me. Your knowledge of Draken tech will be invaluable." Myra nodded, her face a mask of iron will. "I will do what I can." Mark, Myra, and a small security team boarded a heavily armed shuttle. As they approached the Argonaut, they saw it. Draken scavengers, clad in crimson armor, dragging members of the research crew out onto the hull. Plasma fire erupted. Screams echoed through the void. "Open fire!" Mark roared, his voice filled with rage. Now, the shuttle's cannons tore into the Draken scavengers. A fierce firefight erupted within the Argonaut's damaged corridors. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning flesh. Myra's knowledge of Draken tech proved invaluable. She identified weak points in their armor, bypassed security systems, and even disabled some of their W-Doctorons with a few swift keystrokes. Dr. Vaughn, her face streaked with blood and grime, rushed to Mark's side. "They're after the data core," she gasped. "It contains the location of a precursor artifact." "A precursor artifact?" Mark asked, confused. "Yes," Vaughn exclaimed. If the Drakons secure it, it will give them a new weapon, a weapon that can destroy entire systems. Anya's voice, urgent and panicked, blared over the comms. Mark, the destroyer is launching another full-scale assault. Our shields are gone. The countermeasures are failing. The surviving Drakon scavengers, clutching the data core, retreated to their shuttle, preparing to escape. Mark stood frozen, the fate of the Hope and the Argonaut crew, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hanging in the balance. Pursue the scavengers, preventing them from delivering the data core to the Empire. Or return to the Hope to aid Anya against the destroyer. He had to choose. Now, cut off. Alarms blared, red emergency lights strobing across the shuttle's cramped interior. Mark gripped the console, his fingers tightening. Report. Engine nacelle 1 gone. A crewman shouted over the din. We're losing power. Meanwhile, on the Hope, Anya felt the shudder run through the ship's frame, throwing her against the console. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. Damage report, she yelled, her voice tight. Engine nacelle 1 critical failure, power levels plummeting, life support failing. Anya swore Mark's decision. It had bought them time, maybe, but at what cost? She rerouted what little power remained, diverting it from the mining lasers to the shields. Shields up, but be advised they're running on fumes. One direct hit and we're space dust. The shuttle bucked violently as it hurtled through the debris field. Almost there, sir, the pilot Diaz said grimly. But this junk is playing hell with our sensors. Just keep us on course, Mark snapped. We can't let them reach that outpost. Myra pointed. There, I see a pattern in their evasive maneuvers. They are heading towards the dark side of the moon, an unmapped region most likely where a hidden outpost would be. Damn it, Mark pounded his fist on the console. Intercept course, full speed. Anya watched the Drakon destroyer on her screen, its energy signature growing brighter. It was toying with her, like a predator with its prey. She activated the mining scanner, broadcasting a scrambled signal designed to mimic the Hope's energy signature, hoping to confuse the Drakon ship. Let's see if you fall for this. The destroyer didn't hesitate. A swarm of metallic insects detached from its hull hunter-killer drones. They bypassed Anya's false signal, swarming towards the Hope with relentless precision. They're not fooled, Captain. Drones incoming. Brace for impact. Anya braced herself. Up ahead, the scavenger ship emerged from the debris field, heading straight for the moon. Engaging, Mark yelled. The shuttle's cannons blazed, tearing into the scavenger ship's shields. The Drakon vessel returned fire, but the shuttle's superior maneuverability allowed it to evade most of the blasts. A lucky shot crippled the scavenger's engines, but it was too late. The Drakon ship limped towards the lunar surface, crash landing near a cluster of jagged rocks. They made it, Mark growled. Prepare for landing. We're going in hot. The shuttle plunged into the moon's atmosphere, the landing gear failing to fully deploy. The impact was brutal. The shuttle skidded across the rocky surface, coming to rest at an angle, its hull groaning under the strain. Report, Mark barked, struggling to his feet. We're down, sir, Diaz said, wincing. Hull breach in Section 3. Life support systems compromised. Security team with me. Mark drew his sidearm. Myra, stay with me. On the Hope, Anya fought to keep the drones at bay. She targeted them with the mining lasers, vaporizing them one by one, but each blast drained more power from the ship's already depleted reserves. Damn it, how many of these things are there? Inside the Drakon outpost, the scavengers worked frantically, bypassing security protocols in their haste to transmit the data core's contents. Almost there, the lead scavenger hissed. Just a few more cycles. Myra's eyes narrowed. I recognize that frequency, she said urgently. It's an open channel they usually reserve for high-priority communications. They're not even trying to hide it. We can intercept it. And, Mark asked, his voice tight, we might be able to inject a sort of virus, Myra explained, her fingers flying across her datapad. Something to mask the true value of the data. It's a long shot and it will alert them to our presence. Mark hesitated for only a moment. Do it. It's our only chance. On the Hope, Anya's sensors flared. "Captain." "The drones are regrouping. They're targeting the weakened engine nacelle. I can't hold them off for much longer." The Draken scavengers completed the transmission. "Data sent," the lead scavenger exclaimed triumphantly. But at that moment, Myra's program took hold, injecting a complex algorithm into the data stream, scrambling the information and masking its true nature. "Done," she said, breathing heavily. "Eye doctor out there." Mark's comm crackled. It was Dr. Vaughn. The transmission was heavily coded. "Mark, listen carefully. The artifact. It is not a weapon, it is a key. And a map, the destruction. It is not the intention but the unintended consequence of a key being used improperly." Before Mark could respond, the outpost's main doors hissed open. A Draken landing ship descended, its engines whining. Draken soldiers poured out, weapons raised. "Well, that's just great," Mark muttered. "Now what?" On the Hope, Anya braced herself. The hunter-killer drones converged on the weakened engine nacelle, their weapons charged. A blinding flash followed by a deafening explosion. The Hope shuddered violently, power failing completely. Life support systems winked out. "Anya, report." Mark shouted into his comm. Silence. Then a burst of static and nothing. Laser fire scorched the durasteel plating where Mark had been standing moments before. "Fall back, into the outpost," he barked, shoving a wounded security officer ahead of him. Draken troops poured from the landing ship, their guttural battle cries echoing in the narrow corridor. He risked a glance back. The Hope was a silent, unblinking monument against the violet sky. Inside the Hope's bridge, Anya gasped, her vision tunneling. The air thinned with each ragged breath. "Gotta focus." Her fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled across the console. With a final surge of adrenaline, she slammed her fist down on the emergency life support override. A klaxon blared and the lights flickered, dimming to a sickly yellow. "Limited. Oxygen. Power only to..." "Bridge." Commander Goran, his scaled face grim, surveyed the conquered outpost. "Secure the perimeter, find the humans, and make sure the data core is safe." He spat on the floor. "Those rebels will pay for their insolence." His second-in-command approached. "Commander, the data streams were corrupted. We don't know what they were trying to hide." Goran snarled, "Doesn't matter, find it." A low hiss permeated the outpost. Myra, hidden behind a control panel, grinned. She'd rerouted the ventilation system, flooding the Draken's position with a non-lethal but highly irritating gas used for riot control on Ither. "Now, Commander," she whispered, "let's see how you like breathing something other than Draken pride." Mark, hearing the muffled coughs and curses, signaled his remaining team. "Now, flank them." Goran, choking on the suddenly acrid air, received a priority message on his helmet comm. "Commander Goran, this is Flagship Dominion. Emperor Zargoth demands you retrieve the data core personally and return to the flagship immediately. Its security is paramount." Goran cursed. "Understood, but we are under attack." The comm cut off. Laser fire erupted from the ventilation shafts as Mark and Myra, with their small security detail, ambushed the Draken landing party. The confined space turned into a chaotic firefight, the air thick with smoke and the smell of burnt flesh. One of the security team took a plasma blast to the chest, collapsing with a strangled cry. On the Hope, the emergency power flickered again, threatening to plunge the bridge into darkness. Anya, her face pale and clammy, forced her fingers to work. "Distress. Signal. Must. Warn. Them." She managed to transmit a heavily garbled message before the backup power died completely, leaving her in near darkness and silence. Mark cornered Goran near the entrance to the landing ship. "What's so important about this data core?" he demanded, his pulse rifle trained on the Draken's head. Goran sneered. "It's none of your concern, rebel. The Empire will crush you all. It is the key. The key to unlocking a weapon of unimaginable power. Not if I have anything to say about it." Myra, having bypassed the landing ship's anti-theft system, shouted, "It's clear, Commander. Go, go, go." As Mark boarded the ship, another security team member fell, a smoking hole where his heart had been. "They think it's a weapon," Mark said, his voice grim as he took the pilot's seat. But Vaughn said it was something else, a key. He glanced at Myra. "We're taking this ship. We're going after the truth." Anya drifted in and out of consciousness. Images flashed behind her eyes. Earth, a green and vibrant paradise she'd only known through simulations. Her father, a renowned astrophysicist, beaming with pride as she aced her quantum mechanics exams. The moment she met Mark, a raw recruit with a spark of something extraordinary in his eyes. Science. The pursuit of knowledge, worth any price. Mark, humanity must survive. "Punch in these coordinates," Mark ordered, overriding the Draken navigation system. Vaughn's message. It had a hidden sequence. "That's where we're going." He ignored the frantic comms from Earth Command and the Draken flagship, his eyebrows furrowed. Goran, bruised and defeated, managed to activate a hidden comm channel. "Emperor Zargoth, the rebels, they have stolen the landing ship. They are headed towards the precursor anomaly. I failed you." Anya's hallucination shattered. The emergency lights flickered back on, bathing the bridge in a weak yellow glow. An automated voice announced, "Auto repair system. Rerouting power, life support, minimal functionality, barely enough to keep her alive." The landing ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace. Myra gripped her seat, her multifaceted eyes wide with concern. "Mark, are you sure about this? Disobeying direct orders, stealing a Draken ship. This is insane." "Maybe," Mark admitted, his gaze fixed on the swirling vortex of hyperspace. "But it's also our only chance. I trust Vaughn, and I trust my gut." On the Dominion, Emperor Zargoth thumped his hand on the command console, shattering the crystal display. "Insolent worms, they dare defy me." His voice, a gravelly rasp, echoed through the bridge. "Order a full-scale pursuit, and execute Goran's family. Let that be a lesson to anyone who fails me." Anya blinked, her vision clearing. A single red light flashed insistently on the console. "Life support critical. Estimated runtime, 1 hour." She was alone, stranded, and running out of time. Aboard the stolen landing ship, Mark and Myra hunched over the precursor data core, its surface swirling with incomprehensible symbols. "Vaughn said the key was hidden within the data itself," Mark muttered, his fingers flying across the console. "But what does it mean?" Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared. "What's happening?" Myra cried, grabbing onto a handrail. "The ship. It's malfunctioning. Systems are going haywire." Unbeknownst to them, a faint ping echoed in the void. A battered freighter, the Stardust Drifter, registered a weak distress signal. "Captain," the comms officer announced, "we've picked up a garbled transmission. Sounds like a Terran vessel in distress, but they are several hours away." Anya's vision swam, the edges of her sight dissolving into a blurry gray. The emergency lights strobing across her face felt like hammer blows. She coughed, a metallic tang coating her tongue, the taste of failing cybernetics. Her fingers, numb and clumsy, tightened around the damaged data pad, the cracked screen reflecting her distorted face. A low hum vibrated through the hope, growing steadily louder. A series of rapid beeps echoed from the comms panel, the unmistakable signature of an approaching vessel. "Minimal life signs detected," a robotic voice announced, its tone devoid of inflection. "Preparing to board." A rhythmic pulse, like a distorted heartbeat, overlaid the ship's comms chatter, growing stronger with each passing second. Mark, his face grim, adjusted the frequency, trying to isolate the signal. Myra, her brow furrowed, tapped furiously at the precursor device, her Ithorian vocal sacs fluttering with suppressed frustration. "It's linked to their approach, Mark. I'm sure of it." The airlock hissed open with a sigh of compressed air. Captain Alara Vance, a woman carved from asteroid dust and tenacity, stepped onto the Hope. Her laser pistol was holstered, but her hand hovered close. Behind her, 2 figures in armored suits moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons raised. "Clear," Vance barked, her voice raspy. "Medical team to me." The landing ship lurched violently, throwing Mark against the console. Alarms blared, bathing the cockpit in a harsh red light. The navigation display flickered erratically, a string of numbers replaced by jagged, unfamiliar symbols. He gripped the controls, nucleus tightening. What the hell is happening? A medical officer, a young woman with tired eyes, knelt beside Anya, her scanner whirring softly. She ran the device over Anya's temples, her expression shifting from professional detachment to open curiosity. "Incredible," she murmured, tracing the lines of Anya's cybernetic implants. "I've never seen anything like this." Mark smacked his head against the console, ignoring the jolt of pain. He frantically typed override commands, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The system resisted, a warning message flashing across the screen in the same alien script. He swore under his breath. Captain Vance squatted beside Anya as the medical officer worked. "You're human, aren't you?" she asked, her voice low and probing. "What's your business out here so far from the Sol system, and what's your connection to the Draxan Empire?" Myra rushed into the cockpit, her 3 hearts pounding in her chest. "Mark, I think I know what's happening. The precursor technology. It's reacting to them. It's trying to guide us somewhere." She pointed to the swirling patterns on the device. A specific location. Anya coughed again, spitting a fleck of blood onto the floor. She met Vance's gaze, her eyes narrowed. "We're just explorers," she rasped, her voice weak. "We stumbled across something we shouldn't have." She deliberately omitted any mention of the artifact or the Draxan Empire. The landing ship shuddered violently, throwing everyone off balance. Loose equipment clattered across the floor. A high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by a series of explosions. Gravitational anomalies detected. A panicked voice shouted over the comms. "System failures across the board." Vance stood, her eyes hardening. "Scan the Hope's logs," she ordered, her voice sharp. "I want to know everything about these humans, everything." A crew member scrambled to obey. Mark and Myra pored over the star charts, comparing them to the symbols displayed by the precursor device. Myra gasped, pointing to a cluster of stars on the edge of the galaxy. "Mark, those symbols. They match constellations in a previously unknown star system." "I've never seen anything like it, but it is there." Aboard the Iron Fist, Emperor Zargoth paced his bridge, his reptilian eyes narrowed. A coded message flashed across the main view screen, relayed from a distant outpost. "The human landing ship. It has been recovered," a Draxan officer reported. "And Vaughn's final message has been received." Zargoth paused, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "An accident," he snarled, dismissing the report. "Continue the full-scale pursuit as planned, and redirect a small fleet to destroy the Hope and the trading vessel. Leave no trace." The crew member looked up at Captain Vance and held out the file. "Captain Vance, this is what you are looking for. Mark Wright, humanity's greatest weapon." Mark stared at the coordinates, his heart pounding in his chest. Trusting this felt insane, but what choice did he have? "Set a course," he said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "For that star system, full speed." The Stardust drifter shuddered, the lights flickered, and then everything dissolved into a blinding flash of white. Hyperspace swallowed them whole. The ship, now heading towards Earth at full speed, carried information that the Empire must never know. Just before the jump to hyperspace completed, a holographic image flickered into existence in the center of the cockpit. A tall, slender alien with large, luminous eyes stared out at them, its expression unreadable. The landing ship shuddered violently, throwing Anya against a sparking console. "Gravitational shear is off the charts," she yelled, her voice barely audible above the klaxons. Myra, her multi-jointed hands a blur, wrestled with a panel of flickering lights. "Precursor systems are overloading. I can't stabilize the power grid." Mark gripped a handrail, his squeezing hard. He needed to talk to Vance, but the chaos made it impossible. He pushed his way toward the cockpit, finding the captain strapped into her command chair, her face a mask of unyielding commitment. "Captain," Mark shouted over the din, "we need to talk." Vance spared him a glance, her eyes narrowed. "About what, Admiral? The imminent destruction of my ship." "About Zargoth," Mark insisted, leaning closer. "He won't stop with your world or any world. He wants complete domination. We're the only ones who can stop him." Vance's eyes sharp. "Easy words for a man who just walked onto my bridge. I've seen empires rise and fall, Admiral. They all promise the same thing." Yet she did not order him off the bridge. "For now, I'll prioritize keeping my crew alive and my ship in one piece. Cooperate, and maybe I'll start believing your fairy tale." Below them, the holographic message from the precursors continued its endless loop. Myra, her brow furrowed in concentration, called out, "Admiral, I've isolated a repeating sequence within the data stream. I think it's a form of language." Anya, wiping sweat from her brow, joined them. "Let me try something. Captain, if you'll excuse me." She turned to Vance, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. This might look a little unconventional. Anya approached the precursor interface, a series of pulsating conduits and glowing nodes. With a deep breath, she reached up and detached a small panel on the side of her head, revealing a port. Wires snaked from the port to the precursor system. Vance stared, her mouth slightly agape. Anya's eyes glazed over as she interfaced with the alien technology. "My neural implants are partially integrated with precursor tech," Anya explained, her voice strained. "I can use them to translate the message. Hopefully." Vance watched in disbelief as Anya's body went rigid. "What in the—" Anya's eyes snapped open, pupils dilated. "I've got it, the message. It's a warning about a resonance weapon. Zargoth plans to use it on Earth." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "What does it do?" "It amplifies planetary resonance," Anya gasped, "tearing the planet apart from the inside out." "And there's more," Myra interjected, her fingers flying across her console. The precursors left a countermeasure hidden within their ruins, located on a lost colony world. Designation LX-492. Vance stared at them, the color draining from her face. The evidence, the impossible translation, the sheer desperation in their voices. It was too much to ignore. "A resonance weapon," she whispered, more to herself than to them. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them, the set of her jaw firm. "Damn it all. Helm, plot a course for LX-492, maximum speed." As the Stardust Drifter changed course, alarms blared. "Captain, long-range sensors detect a Draxan warship closing fast. It's altering course to intercept." Vance barked orders. "Evasive maneuvers. Divert power to shields." The Stardust Drifter lurched violently as Vance expertly piloted it into a nearby asteroid field. Jagged rocks filled the viewport, whizzing past with terrifying speed. "Hold on tight, people. This is going to get bumpy." The Draxan warship, a sleek, predatory vessel, followed them relentlessly. "They've deployed a squadron of fighters," a crew member yelled. "They're pursuing us into the asteroid field." A series of explosions rocked the ship. "Shields are failing." Then, a collective gasp filled the bridge. One of the pursuing Draxan fighters had miscalculated, slamming into a large asteroid. A ball of fire erupted, momentarily illuminating the chaotic scene, but there was no time to celebrate. A gravitational anomaly undetected by the ship's sensors suddenly pulled the Stardust Drifter towards a swirling vortex of darkness. "Black hole!" Vance screamed. "We're caught in its pull." The ship groaned under the immense pressure. Alarms wailed, systems flickered and died. "We're losing power." Vance fought to maintain control, her hands gripping the controls until her knuckles turned white. "Emergency thrusters, full power." The thrusters roared to life, but it wasn't enough. The Stardust Drifter continued to slide towards the abyss. "They're failing, Captain. We have to do something," Mark yelled, his mind racing. He looked at Myra, then at Anya. An idea, desperate but potentially viable, formed in his mind. "Anya, Myra, can we reroute power from the precursor systems to the thrusters? It's a long shot, but it might give us the boost we need." Without hesitation, Anya and Myra nodded. Working in perfect sync, they bypassed safety protocols and rerouted the alien energy. A surge of power coursed through the ship. The thrusters sputtered, then roared with renewed intensity. The Stardust Drifter shuddered, straining against the gravitational pull. Slowly, agonizingly, it began to pull away from the black hole's event horizon. With a final, earth-shattering groan, it broke free, leaving the swirling darkness behind. The ship limped through space, battered and bruised. Systems were offline and sparks flew from damaged consoles, but they were alive. Vance slumped back in her chair, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She looked at Mark, then at Anya, her eyes filled with a newfound respect. "I'll be damned," she said, her voice hoarse. "You too. You actually did it." She straightened, her gaze hardening with persistence. "LX 492 it is, full speed ahead." Onboard Zargoth's massive flagship, the Emperor pounded his fist on the command console. The Stardust Drifter. It escaped. His lieutenant, a hulking Draxan warrior, trembled before him. "Yes, Your Excellency. It sustained heavy damage, but it managed to evade the black hole." Zargoth turned away, his reptilian eyes narrowed in fury. He thought of the Krill, a species more advanced than the Draxan who had refused to bow before him. He had obliterated them, their knowledge, their culture, everything. He would not allow humanity to defy him. "These humans are more resourceful than I anticipated. No matter, their doom is at hand." He turned back to his lieutenant, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "Order the main fleet to Earth. Deploy the resonance weapon. I want that world shattered." He paused, a flicker of anticipation in his eyes. "And set a course for LX 492. I will personally retrieve the weapon. No one will stop me." The resonance weapon fired, bathing Earth in waves of disruptive energy. Cities buckled. Communications went dark. Panic seized the streets as the sky pulsed with an unnatural, sickly green light. But then, against the encroaching darkness, a ragged fleet emerged from hyperspace. Older ships, converted freighters, every vessel bearing the scars of countless battles, yet they stood defiant, a shield against the Draxan onslaught. At their head flew the Stardust Drifter. Anya worked furiously at her console, sweat beading on her brow. Almost there," she muttered, her fingers flying across the holographic display. Precursor technology, once a mystery, now a weapon. Now, a counter-frequency rippled outwards from the human fleet, clashing against the resonance weapon's energy. The green light faded, replaced by the familiar blue of Earth's atmosphere. The disruption lessened, the panic subsided. The planet still suffered, but it would survive. "Admiral, we've stabilized the situation," Vance's voice crackled over the comms. "But they're still coming. The main Draxan fleet is engaging." Mark took a deep breath. "Prepare the Stardust Drifter for departure. I'm taking a small team to Zargoth's flagship." "Sir, that's suicide." "It's our only chance, Vance. If we can stop Zargoth, we can stop this war." "Then good hunting, Admiral. May we meet again in better times." Vance paused, a hint of emotion in his voice. "Remember us." The Stardust Drifter, cloaked in a shimmering field derived from the precursor tech, slipped through the chaotic battle, a ghost among giants. Mark stood on the bridge, Myra at his side, her Ithorian eyes fixed on the Draxan flagship. "We're approaching the flagship now, Admiral," the pilot announced. "Brace for impact." The Stardust Drifter slammed into the Draxan vessel, tearing through its outer hull. Mark, Myra, and a handful of soldiers stormed the bridge, weapons raised. They found Zargoth standing before a holographic display, his face a mask of fury. "Humans," Zargoth snarled, "you dare trespass in my domain." "This doesn't have to end like this, Zargoth," Mark said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Look at what you've done. Look at the suffering you've caused." Mark activated the precursor technology, projecting images into Zargoth's mind. Visions of the destroyed alien race, their cities reduced to rubble, their people erased from existence, their pleas for mercy unanswered. Zargoth recoiled, clutching his head. "Lies, propaganda. These are the consequences of your ambition, Zargoth, Mark insisted. This is the price of your control. Zargoth's eyes darted around the bridge. For a moment Mark saw a flicker of doubt, of fear in the Draxan Emperor's eyes. The hope of the human fleet stood in stark contrast to the destruction he had caused. Myra stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. There is another way, Zargoth, a way to use your power for good, to help other species advance, to build a better galaxy. She showed him visions of a thriving galactic community where species cooperated and shared knowledge. A future where the Draxan Empire could be a force for progress, not oppression. Zargoth stared at the images, his body trembling. The weight of his actions, the countless lives lost, crashed down upon him. He saw the fear in his own people's eyes, the resentment in the eyes of the subjugated. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "What have I done?" He turned to his officers, his face etched with regret. "Stand down," he commanded. "Cease the attack. I surrender to the humans." A stunned silence fell over the bridge. The Draxan officers stared at their emperor in disbelief. But the war, sir." "It ends now," Zargoth said, his voice now firm with dedication. "My empire is built on fear and oppression. It is time for a new beginning." The order echoed throughout the Draxan fleet, causing widespread confusion. But the Draxan soldiers, conditioned to obey their emperor without question, slowly began to disengage. The fighting ceased. The guns fell silent. News of Zargoth's surrender spread like wildfire throughout the galaxy. Hope bloomed in the hearts of the oppressed. Rebellions erupted on countless worlds. The Draxan Empire, once a symbol of terror, crumbled into dust. In its place, a new galactic alliance was formed. Humans, Ithorians, and even reformed Draxans worked together to build a better future. A future where peace and cooperation reigned supreme. On Earth, Mark and Myra stood side by side, watching the sunrise paint the sky in vibrant hues. The scars of the war were still visible, but they were fading, replaced by the promise of a new dawn. "It's beautiful," Myra said, her voice filled with awe. "It is," Mark agreed, his hand gently touching hers. "A new beginning." "What happens now?" Myra asked. "What does the future hold?" Mark smiled. "We build it together. We help those who need it, we heal the wounds of the past, and we create a galaxy where everyone can thrive." He looked into her eyes, his heart filled with love and hope. "And maybe, just maybe, we find a little happiness along the way." The sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the world in its golden light. The war was over.